Hi everyone, welcome to Reading with Eve, and let's get on with the bookish video. Today I have a small list of psychological thrillers for you to recommend, and I have made a similar video about psychological horror books fairly recently. I kept them separate because I like to just keep those genres on their own in case people who watch these videos, they don't like horror, but they want to see some thriller recommendations and the other way around. And a small disclaimer that all of these thrillers, they also fall into other subgenres of thriller, but I thought that the way that psychological aspects were explored in them really fit that particular subgenre, hence why they are in this category. So let's begin. I will start with a couple of my favorites, and the first one is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, and this follows a psychiatrist who takes a job in this mental institution where we have an artist who shot her husband in the face 5 times and hasn't said a word since. So this psychiatrist essentially takes it upon himself to make her talk and figure out why she did what she did. And this is a twisty, atmospheric thriller with lots of things to consider when it comes to marriage, when it comes to just one's psyche, like what one would do to prove themselves, methods of getting information out. There's a lot, but ultimately it definitely explores the ways that your mind can just make you do interesting things. And I mean, the plot twist is a whole psychological mind, as well. It's just, definitely did not see it coming. I mean, I was just thoroughly entertained by this book, and I would recommend it outside of this video to everyone, but yeah, it definitely fits for me. Then we have Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, and this is actually my favorite book of hers. I mean, it's Gone Girl, no notes there, but this one is my personal favorite because it was the first adult thriller I've ever read, and I was very, very shocked, but in a good way, as to what adult thrillers can entail. And this is also technically a murder mystery thriller because we follow this journalist Camille who comes back to her hometown to investigate a murder of 2 preteen, early teen girls. I'm thinking like 13-ish years old. And they were found brutally murdered. So she kind of tries to figure out what's going on there whilst living at her family's old house and having to interact with her very complicated mother and her half-sister, who is roughly the age of the victims. So yeah, there's also the whole investigative aspect, but for me, it was so much more about Camille's psyche and all the horrible things that have happened to her to make her the way she is, and how she goes through the world and how she interacts with people, and the way that her mother acted, how that shaped her, and her mother's psyche as well is a whole other thing, and even her half-sister. It's just, there's a lot to unpack. There's so many strong women in this book, not necessarily in a good way, but lots of strong personalities to explore and how they all interact with each other. It's a brilliant character study as much as it is a murder mystery thriller. So definitely check this out. Don't let Gone Girl overshadow it because this is also brilliant in its own right. Have Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister, and this follows a main character who is waiting for her son to come home on Halloween night, and she sees her son in the window. He's like coming up the street, and there's this man following him, but before she can do anything about it, her son stabs this man, and she and her husband are completely freaked out. Just, what the hell is going on? Why is our son murdering people? And before she can even think about what to do, she wakes up, and she wakes up a day before, and she kind of just keeps traveling back in time, like trying to stop this murder from happening. And basically, this is obviously, as you can see from the concept, this is definitely also a fantastical thriller, if that's even the right term. I wouldn't really call it paranormal because we're not talking about like ghosts or like poltergeists or entities, but it's definitely fantastical, like with a time loop of sorts. However, for me, the most interesting factor of the book was obviously we spend a lot of time with our main character as she spirals thinking what the hell is going on, and she's thinking about what to do, what needs doing to stop this from happening, and also a lot of reevaluation she's doing on her life as she's going back in time, and a lot of evaluations on her family, and the whole psychology of how far is she going to go to save her son, who she doesn't really know that well at all, and then does she even know her husband at all? There's a lot of like psychological, almost like existential kind of thinking that comes with that. Like, if we had all these chances to go back in time and fix these things and find these things out about our loved ones, like, would we want to do it? So yeah, I mean, I ended up not loving it because of other reasons, but as far as the psychological aspect goes, I would definitely still recommend it. Up next, we have A Heartstream by Tom Pollock, and this is about, it's kind of sci-fi dystopian, but very, very in the background sort of society where we have these very extreme versions of what TikTok, etc. is now. And our main character, she literally has this thing attached to her nervous system that streams everything to her fans. And she essentially comes back from her mother's funeral that she streamed. And she sees this woman who essentially has bomb strapped to herself, stood in her kitchen, and she wants to talk to our main character. Otherwise, everything's gonna go ba-boom. And this was not at all what it turned out to be. Like, it wasn't presented the way that the book actually turned out to be. Because while it definitely had that whole element of action and survival as well, ultimately this was again a character exploration of our protagonist discovering that she might have not actually known the type of person her mother was at all. And there was like a lot of talk about just social media and how that affects us, and just are we kind of becoming less human, and just things that we're willing to do for our own gain that will end up completely destroying others. I mean, again, I didn't love this one, but that was for other reasons that I've already spoken about. But I thought that it's still worth mentioning because as far as the whole psychological aspect goes, it definitely matches the criteria. So yeah, I would check this out, but just going knowing that it's not quite what's presented in the synopsis. Then we have Watching You by Lisa Jewell, and this is essentially about our main character who moves back to the UK after spending some time in Ibiza, and she impulsively marries someone while there. So she and her new husband are now living with her brother and his wife, and they're expecting a baby. And her brother just says, just get a job, get some savings up, and then you can look to move out, but like there's no rush. So it all seems really nice and good. Everything's going well, except she starts kind of obsessing over this man who is twice her age, lives next door, is married with a kid, and she kind of starts stalking him a little bit, and turns out that someone is also stalking her. And the reason I'm putting this one here, because it's definitely still, there's a murder that needs to be solved, there is the whole stalking aspect, and just there's a lot in this book, but the reason it's in this video is because stalking is kind of like one of the main things in human psyche for me that interests me. Like, what prompts someone to just think the way that they do and they decide that it is necessary for them to pursue this person through such means? Like, how does their brain work? And I thought that it was an interesting exploration as to what could cause this and how people like that behave and how they see their behavior. So I thought that was quite interesting. And yeah, I mean, again, you notice a trend. Like, I've actually not loved pretty much any of the books apart from the two in the beginning that I'm talking about now. But that's the point. Like, even if they're not my all-time favorites, I can see why they would be appropriate to recommend for this specific video. Because if I just recommended my 5-star all-time favorites, then there wouldn't be many videos. But even if I had some problems with a book, for it to not be a 5-star for me doesn't mean that I don't think you're not gonna like it. So that's why I'm recommending it. But yeah, it definitely meets the psychological thriller aspect for me as far as I'm concerned. And lastly, I have a book that I have read during the month of April, so I've not actually talked about it yet because I've not filmed my wrap-up. I think my April wrap-up is gonna come pretty late into May, but that's because I'm going on holiday, so I'm sorting out videos to post while I'm on holiday. Anyway, so I'm not gonna talk about what I thought of the book personally, but I will describe why I think that it's worth being in this list. On this list even. And that is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. And here we follow Rowan, yes, that's the name, who accepts this child kind of caring job that's like a live-in babysitter and also like a bit of house upkeep as well in this super remote location for this rich family. And the house is kind of like smart house, new technology sort of vibe. And yeah, things don't go well because when we start the book, it is after the events have already happened and she's actually writing the events of the story to this guy who she wants to represent her in a case because she's in trial for murder of one of the children that she was looking after. But of course, she's insisting that she didn't do it. So the reason why this book is on this list is because, I mean, it is the perfect psychological thriller. We have an unreliable narrator, like we're questioning ourselves. Is she telling the truth? And throughout the story, we see her kind of questioning herself, like, what is going on in this house? Am I going insane? Or is something really happening? We have even some hints of the paranormal as well. I mean, I think out of Ruth Ware's books that I have read, and I'll talk about my wrap-up, but I think that out of the 4 that I've read so far, at least, this is the one that, if amped up a little bit, it probably could pass as like a light horror book. I think some people actually do classify this as a horror book, but no, it's still a thriller for me. I would say maybe with like a bit of a very light horror element, but yeah, definitely had all those psychologically tense moments, and with her and the children, their dynamics, it was really just, yeah, so I thought that definitely meets the criteria for it to be a psychological thriller. Of course, we do have the whole murder mystery aspect, like, did she do it, did she not do it, like, is anyone else responsible sort of thing, but it was about Rowan's psychology, who she is as a person, how she communicates with the kids and with the family, and think that it's definitely worth trying. A lot of people say that this is her best book. I mean, I will talk about it again. I keep saying it's kind of hard to recommend a book that you've not officially given your like proper overall opinion for, but yeah, I would absolutely recommend it. And that is it. If you like this video, please make sure to leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, maybe subscribe.